Greetings, MelVee family. I hope I find you well today. I'm your host, Melusi Njalambi, and this is the podcast On The Go. As you know, on this one, we talk about anything and to anyone, anywhere. Today, we're sitting with a brilliant, I would call her an institution. On this show, we always try to bring you leaders and thought leaders, business leaders. Even in mothering, you must be a leader in mothering. And I'm talking to my sister that I met through what I call a divine hookup. Greetings and welcome, Nobuntu.
Thank you so much for having me. I am excited. This has been long coming.
Long?
Yeah.
Because if I look at when you gave me this book,
Yeah.
back then, it's like what, pre-COVID?
Yeah, definitely pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
Definitely
Many
pre-COVID.
years.
Yes.
Welcome and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You know, when I look at you now, I'm almost tempted to just shut down, keep quiet, and give you the platform.
Oh, man, no ways.
You've been a mother, you were a sister, you were into business, and then recently you surprised me. You went into politics.
Yes. Yeah,
We're going to talk all about that.
absolutely.
And how have you been?
I'm tired. I will be honest. It's been a bumper year. I have had so much happen. I've had many doors open.
Yes,
I
and you
have
went
had-
in.
And I went in. I really feel like this has been a year of destiny coming to manifestation.
Wow.
The things that I was created in my mother's womb to do, I've done
They are
them throughout my
finally
life.
coming in.
But I've done them throughout my life. But I think the level at which I'm now operating in them came to fulfillment this year. And so it's
Yeah.
been a jam-packed year. It's
Wow.
been a blessed year. It's been a busy year. So of course
Wow.
I'm tired. So I'm tired, but I'm fulfilled.
Yes. You know, I sat on that YouTube video and I was watching you and I'm like, Lord, what has this lady become now? And I say to myself, I must get in touch with her before it's too late to get her.
I'm
You're on
glad
national
you
TV.
did. I'm glad you did.
But on this podcast, we want to really just unpack Nobuntu. And people may say, we know you. But I know, and I know. Don't ask me how. I know. They don't know who Nobuntu is and what makes you. So today we just want to unpack a little bit of that. So who's Nobuntu?
Sure. It's a loaded question.
Yes.
Nobuntu grew up in Durban, KZN. I was born and raised in Durban, KZN.
All right.
And I always say that the things that shaped who I am, you know, there's two very, very important things that shaped who I am. One, it was, in fact, there's three things.
Yeah.
One, what shaped who I am is how my parents raised me. So I was raised by parents who really just gave us the space to be, the space to become, the space to find out who we were. They did that, though, having anchored us in God. And so they taught us God by living Christ-like.
All right.
For starters, and just making sure that we were in spaces that filled us with who God is, that filled us with prayer. You know,
right.
I've come to appreciate the fact that I grew up, even from my mother's womb. My mother says that from the time she knew she was pregnant, she was praying and speaking over me. From the time she knew.
Wow.
And so I was raised in spaces of prayer. I was saturated in prayer. I remember I have memories of being a child who is in a home where people come and pray. I have memories of waking up and my mother is hovering over me in the middle of the night praying. You know, she'd be doing the same for my siblings. I have memories of a home where we prayed together every evening, and I have memories of my father saying that grace, you know, almost Jesu Christu, uthando lukamoya ngcwele, no kuhlanganyelwa moya ngcwele nothando lukababa maliphumule enhlizweni zethu azabuya uJesu Kristu. Like that's an everyday thing for me. So they raised me in that kind of space. So that's one of the first things that really shaped who I was. The second thing that shaped who I was living in two different worlds.
Okay.
So I grew up in obviously a township. I was born in 1982. I'm 40. And so...
welcome to the fourth floor.
To the fourth floor. So that's why it's so significant that it's been such a wow year.
Yes.
A breakthrough year, because this is
It's
my
your
40th
fourth
year.
year.
It's my 40th year. And so I grew up in this kind of space where I lived in two worlds. So I grew up in a township. I was born in Lamontville, and then I was raised in Nanda.
All right.
For most of my life. I mean, we moved to a suburb. I was about 16 years old. So I'd grown up in the township. But from the age of 3, I went to school in the suburbs.
All right.
And so I knew from a very young age that there was this dichotomy.
All right.
And there were these two worlds. And I understood injustice, especially social and economic injustice, from a very young age. I understood it because I lived it. I would wake up in an area where some people go, without food. I'd see my parents, helping out neighbors and that kind of thing with groceries. I grew up in an area where there were roads that were not tarred, where water was fetched from down the road, where often there was no water.
It was not even there.
Where load shedding is not a new thing. We grew up on load shedding. And I grew up like that. But then on the other side, I went to the best schools in Durban.
Oh, wow.
So then I grew up in going to Musgrave every day to a school called Maristella, which is like one of the top, even today, private schools in Durban, girls' private schools in Durban. So I lived in
a dichotomous world.
In a dichotomous world. And my father politicized me from quite a young age.
Okay.
He did it at a level that I could understand. So as we traversed through these two worlds, he would tell me why.
Okay.
Why I have to go to the school, why they have to take me to the school, why am I at the school? And the reason was that there were no schools that were at the level that those schools were at. This still is the case today in the townships, right? So it was that education of we take you to the school because we want you to have the same opportunity, the same education as other children, as white children, but you won't get it here where we stay. So we are forcing. There's no public schools that allow black children in. So we have to take you to private schools, even though we can't afford it. We're literally going without to make sure that you can have the same opportunity as those children. So that was another thing that shaped me.
Wow.
Those two different worlds. And I think the last thing that shaped me was going to girls' schools all my life.
Really?
Yeah. I went to girls' schools my whole life.
Oh, wow.
So
from primary right through.
So from the time I was in grade 1
I'm
to grade 12.
I'm just glad there's no girls' university.
Otherwise
you'd have gone to one.
So I mean, when I got to university, I started interacting with boys properly every day for the first time in my life. I had never been interacting on a daily basis with the other gender. And that shaped me. The schools I went to, really were about grooming young women leaders.
Yes.
Grooming girls to be leaders. And I think that helped in shaping me and in giving me my voice.
Right.
I was also in a home where I'm the only girl, I'm the firstborn.
Okay.
And my parents gave me that space as a girl child, to say, you will have the same opportunities as your brothers. And in fact, I would say I got better opportunities by virtue of being a firstborn. The resources are still there more than when there's 3 of you. So I had good opportunities. My father made sure that I got my license. With my brothers, it was kind of like my father made sure. He took it upon himself. He taught me how to drive. I mean, he taught the others how to drive as well. He registered me into the driving school. He went with me when I was doing my driver's license. I think I was about 19. All right. He made sure that I got my driver's license. He did that. So, my parents recognized the leader in me. They would consult with me about decisions.
Oh, you
and the family.
So you were a deputy mother.
I was a deputy parent. I was properly a deputy parent. My parents did that.
Wow.
And so even in with my grandmothers and extended family, especially my paternal family, I was mafungwashe and I felt it, and it was known, and I was celebrated, and I was honored. So that's another thing that really, those are the things that shaped me. That's my childhood, and that's what made me who I am.
So I think, looking at your parents, they're still alive?
My father passed away last year, unfortunately, to COVID.
And mom?
Mom is still alive.
Oh, COVID came and...
Yeah.
I'm so sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
So mom is still in Durban.
Mom is still in Durban.
I would think your parents were visionaries. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
They looked beyond
Absolutely.
their situation and their circumstances, and they said, our children will not grow up to be in the same environment we are in. And
without a shadow of a doubt.
exactly. And their faith, how is that rubbed on to you now?
Oh,
From that young girl who was prayed over.
It is the very core and the very essence of who I am. There is nothing that I do, that I am, that is not part of my faith. My faith has driven my life, my life's work, my purpose. You know, I saw a video that I resonated with so well. And it was by the late Chadwick from Black Panther.
Yes.
And he was talking about how purpose and calling is not one stagnant thing.
Okay.
It's not stagnant.
All right.
And for me, I've lived that, I've experienced that. I know what my purpose and calling is, but it manifests in different ways. Hence, you talk about how I do all these different things.
Yes.
It manifests in different ways. And what drives that is the Spirit of God at every moment saying, here's what you got to do now. Here's how I'm using you now. Here's where I'm taking you now. I genuinely and generally don't know. I can't tell you 10 years what things look like because I listen, I'm led, I'm guided.
Yes.
And the Spirit of God will guide every next step that I take.
Yeah.
And so that is something that I know I have because of my parents' faith.
So growing up in KZN, people always joke about people who come from KZN to say they speak no other language besides Zulu and English.
Nagabua.
Yabua.
Ndiyathetha.
Wow.
No shame. Yeah,
A little bit
it's not a
here
real
and there.
thing. It's not a real thing. It's not a real thing.
But you're raised up in a very traditionally and very culturally strong kingdom of Amazulu. And I think in South Africa, that's one identity you can't miss in the heritage of South Africa.
Yeah.
How does that shape you? Yes, you've got your faith, you've got your parents, but there's this thing about being a Zulu princess and being the firstborn in a predominantly patriarchal society. How does that shape you to become the Nobuntu you are today?
So interestingly, I'm actually Xhosa.
All right.
By the way. So my father's Xhosa.
Okay.
My mother's Zulu. I grew up in the Zulu kingdom, as you say.
Right.
I call myself a Xhosa.
Oh, Zulu. Oh, okay.
I call myself, it's literally a Xhosa. And,
All right.
But obviously the strongest influence has been from the Zulu side because this is where we grew up. My father himself moved to Durban when he was 19. Their family moved and he was in Durban from the age of 19. You know, he was born in the Eastern Cape, spent his childhood in the Western Cape. And then from the age of 19, he was in Durban. So, you know, he spoke his Zulu and, you know, we grew up. Even I was telling you now, Ufefe, when he said Ufefe, he'd say it in Zulu and not in Xhosa.
All right.
So, you know, I've been influenced by both the Xhosa and the Zulu. The Xhosa influence is because I spent some years in Lamontville living with my paternal family, my grandmother and my uncles and aunts, and that was a Xhosa space. And that's where the Xhosa influence comes from.
All right.
And that's where, and I think, you know, I know that the Mafungwase part was strongly pushed by my grandmother,
All right.
who herself actually was a liberation activist and a very, very strong woman herself. And so I know that part comes from that. My mother, being Zulu, has the things that I've learned from my mother and that Zulu culture has been respect, you know, and humility. Honestly, you know, people say a lot of things about Amazulu, about the arrogance and this and that, but Amazulu are amongst the most humble people. When you are in a space with Amazulu, there is an element of respect with which you engage with one another. You see the other. You know, when we say Sawubona, it's a real thing. Like, Ngiyakubona,
I can see you.
I can see you. We genuinely see the other. And growing up in KZN and growing up in that Zulu culture has shaped, for me, Ubuntu bam.
Yes.
that acknowledgement of the other person, that acknowledgement of another person's dignity, that acknowledgement of the presence and the importance of another person has really been shaped by ubuZulu bami.
Yes. And no wonder they call you Nobuntu.
A beautiful name that my father gave me, but also a huge responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're carrying a legacy of what it means to be the first Ngobuto of this family. Yeah. And so let's talk about your early teenage years. Let's rewind a little bit, go back there. There are things that shape us in life to become who we are. Some of them we shade them off while we are being shaped into what we are becoming. And I want you to tell us, perhaps to young girls out there, because you perhaps defy the traditional South African girl in that you have lived a life that I could actually unplug you from here and drop you in New York and you would thrive. Because you've been around, you've done stuff, you've grown up in perhaps not, you're coming from a not so privileged background, but you've been accessing the privileges. So it shapes you into becoming someone. But as a young person, teenage years, college years, what shapes you and what world unfolds into your eyes?
Sure.
It's no longer KZN now. You are into these bright lights of the cities. And what are you dreaming about?
So I firstly have to say that a lot of my life, and this is the part, you say there's things people don't know. Mm-hmm. A lot of my life was shaped by church.
Okay.
So I literally lived, when I wasn't at school, basically I was at church.
All right. And when you were in school, you wish you were in church.
Kind of thing, So that really shaped who I am. And I think it anchored me.
All right.
It anchored me not just in faith, it anchored me in Ubuntu. You know, when I talk about Ubuntu, it really anchored me Ubuntu. Being part of, so I grew up in the Assemblies of God, and the Assemblies of God is huge. It's an institution.
Yes.
It's huge. And so you get to be around different people, but you also then get to understand institution. Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot about how institutions are run, how institutions are grown, the institutional things, even small things like minuting meetings and that type of thing. I learned about leadership structures where there's a chairperson, there's a deputy, I learned about leadership structures and started leading in those spaces. And that was, an interesting kind of thing to learn and to get from those spaces. Although that was limited, right? So I could only really lead in spaces for women.
All right.
In Tompi and that kind of thing. But you get to watch and you get to see the structures. You get to see that, this is how institutions are run. This is how they're structured. This is how you create structure, and this is how you structure leadership and that type of thing. So that is one part. The second part, like you say, is that, I'm then a teenager who is in these spaces that can access privilege. And I think that really was where my leadership was harnessed.
All right.
Is in school. I spoke earlier about being in girls' schools.
Yes.
I found myself, my family used to tease me and say, hey, Nobuntu his hand, you kundla. And I'd say, my dad used to love to say that. And I'd say, no, I don't think kundla. Like, literally, he's only tanda mina.
Yeah.
These things just happened to me. But the biggest thing was being able to be. So I never had to strive for all that because I just could be myself. There was nothing pushing back on the strength that I had.
But let's nail it down.
Yeah.
I feel what you're saying.
Yeah.
For me,
yeah,
it's almost like when I get into any environment, everyone expects me to say something. And if I don't speak, something is not right. Are you okay? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's a certain aura that comes with your personality that then propels you into a position where people just automatically choose you to be.
Yeah.
And then normally that comes from the person that you are. It's got nothing to do with your birth or anything. It's just what God has gifted you with. And I feel like it's leadership You can't run away from it.
Yeah.
It's as if though when you come into a meeting, Nobuntu, and you keep quiet,
Yeah.
people will be like,
Something's off.
someone has done something to Nobuntu
Something
here.
is off. Yeah.
All right?
Yeah. So I absolutely agree with that. And I think what I was saying is, and what I would hope the audience learns from it is, it's about the creating the space for people to be like that.
Yes.
To be themselves. So I think the access to the privilege is access to a space where, as a girl child, as a teenager, as a young woman, I have the space to be this person. Having a home where I can be this person and I'm not shut down.
Yeah.
Because it is a thing that I do believe you're born with. There's somebody who is a friend who said something to me, it must have been 6 or 7 years ago, but it changed my life because it helped me understand who I am.
Okay.
And she said to me, your gift is authority. So you walk into a room and there's an authority, and that is a divine gift.
Yes.
And so that is a gift. And I'm so grateful to her for having pointed that out to me, because I had to learn how to then steward that gift.
Right.
And it helped me understand, and this is the difficult part of it, because this all sounds great, is that I have had difficult moments, and I have been challenged, and I have been hurt. And it is because that kind of presence is not always welcome.
Yes.
And that kind of presence threatens people.
Especially if it's coming from someone who's a woman.
Especially
in this country.
When it's coming from someone who's a woman.
Yeah.
It threatens people. And so there will be people who will try to suppress that. There will be people who will try to kill that in you. It's something that happened when I was in school. It's just that I think when I was still a teenager and in school, I didn't really care. I mean, you have that, there's this thing about youth, man.
Yeah.
That you don't always feel the punches.
Yes. You can always rise up again.
You can always
There'll be
rise up
another
again.
day.
It's always water off a duck's back. And retrospectively, I look back and I see that, they were trying to suppress me and they're trying to shut me down. But, the resilience is, I think our resilience is strong when we're born. I think it gets eaten up as we grow, and then we have to build it again when we get older.
Yes.
I think I was in that space where my resilience was still so strong that I couldn't even feel that. And I didn't even recognize it for what it was. The naivety as well is also good. And I think that's the folly of
innocence
youth.
as
The
well.
innocence.
Yeah.
The innocence means that there's things that don't hit you because you don't realize what they are. So it started happening from that time. But as I got older, it hit a bit harder. As I think I was already in my 30s when I experienced a woman leader, actually, that really just tried to break this that I am and came close to doing so.
You almost allowed them.
I almost allowed it. And I think to a large extent, there's a lot of damage that happened in that time. And I hadn't known that there was damage. I hadn't realized that I'd lost myself, that I'd lost the confidence to live and walk and be in that authority, literally until about 2 or 3 years ago.
Wow.
I was in a leadership program that had a very strong personal development element to it. And that's when I realized that I actually have lost a big part of who I am. I've lost a sense of my authority, and I've lost a sense of my strength. And it's then that I got it back and I started to have it restored, because you have to see first that it's been broken and that it's lost. And only then can you get it back. And when I look at my life over the past 2-3 years, you can see. You can actually, if you now that I'm sharing this, if you now look and you look at the trajectory over the past 3 years, you can go,
it's true.
It's true. We always, and people will always be like, but you've always been great, but you've always been a leader. But there's a period where if you trace my life, you can see that there's something that was lost here. And then that 2-3 years ago, I came back into myself fully. And I sit here today and I can say that over the past 2-3 years, you can see.
Because there's no way, in my own view, you could stand up and say, I'm here. I'm going to stand up and chart a direction of where this country should go. Because that takes a whole lot of another level. And we're going to get back to it. But I want you to walk us through, this is a quite thick book. And thank you for the gift that you gave me to read
so
this.
welcome.
And I think this came from one of your Facebook posts. I can't remember what the post was about,
Yeah.
but you kind of kept going. And you were taking screenshots of the things you had written here.
Yeah.
The fire in my bones, burning everything religion taught me. What was happening here when you were writing this?
I think what was happening here was a moment of giving voice to the experience and thoughts and journey that I've been on my whole life with God. That's what was happening. You know, what I write about in that book is, and it's actually 101. I always say to people, this book is still 101. You know, there's so much more that I've learned and I've grown into. There's so much more that I already knew and understood and had revelation of, even when I was writing this book. But God said, not yet.
But tell me, when you say banning everything religion taught me, are you saying we should do away with our religion? What your parents taught you?
No.
Ban it.
So I'll tell you what I'm saying. I'm saying that there are many things that are not God and that are not, I'm Christian. And so I'm saying they are not the gospel of Christ.
All right.
They are culture.
Okay.
They are the culture of church that we have learned that we need to burn, because they are actually not God and they are not the gospel. They are a culture that we have actually either created, some of it we've created, some of it we've adopted. So some of it we have to own and say, as African Christians, we've created. One of those things is the issue of hierarchy and the issue of idolizing leaders in church spaces. That's a thing. It's an African trait that we've created. We want to create messiahs and we want to create thrones for the people who lead us, and they're not actually God, and we make them God.
And we make them, I see what you're saying. So no one can come and tell me what God is saying about my life when God has not revealed it to me. And so you can't be a deputy God.
You can't
and
be
so
a deputy
the Spirit
God.
only works through the men of God.
There we go.
So I cannot hear from God. I have to go to.
There we go.
That's
a very
religion.
dangerous thing. It's a very dangerous thing, and that's part of religion. It is part of religion. For example, there are some things that we've learned even about the place of women.
Oh, yes.
In the church and in the gospel, and that's religion.
Yeah.
That is not the gospel. That is not God. That is not Christ. That is something that it's a societal norm.
Yes.
That we've adopted and that we have taken as being. We've distorted scripture
on what women are,
on what
and
women
the
are,
relationship with men,
and who they are in order to do that. One of the things I write about in the book, there's a couple of things I write about when it comes to that.
This is quite fascinating.
It is it's my favorite part of the book, and was most fascinating for me. And that is the place of women. So, for instance, I always struggled with and you may or may not agree with this one. It's one of those controversial ones, but I love talking about it.
Bring it on. This is the platform. This is the right platform to talk about it.
I always struggled with saying my husband's the head of our home.
The head of the home.
Yeah, of our home. Because, I'll tell you why, because of how we live and because of the truth of our home. My husband and I live as partners. We work together to build our home as partners.
Okay.
We have defined roles for ourselves that are not gender specific, but that work for us.
Okay.
The fact that my husband is the one, for instance, who takes care of the house financially, it's not a gender thing. It was based on...
Money has no male and female dollars.
Money has no male and female dollars. It was based on needs that I had. It was based on what he wanted to provide and needs he had. And that was what we came up with. But it is not a gender role. The fact that I cook in my family is not a gendered thing. I happen to like to cook. I happen to be the one who can cook. He wasn't taught to cook. That's a gender thing. That's a patriarchal system.
Yeah.
But I happen to know how to cook, and I happen to enjoy it as something that is, for me, part of loving my family. You know, so those kinds of things. The fact that I then take care of other financial aspects of our family. It's not a gender thing. It is a partnership, and it's what works.
In fact, if we are to go back to the original, on another day,
Yeah.
on a theological debate, I'll take you on that one, and I would like us to really have a theological debate.
Good.
Because
Good.
that's what keeps religion standing sometimes.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the origins. My take is that it was not a mistake for God to create a woman,
Yeah.
because already he had made provision for the creation of a woman in a man.
Absolutely.
That's why he didn't go and look for another mound of soul to make a woman.
Yeah.
The woman was already provided for. And for me, in my I have a message I always teach, and I love this one, that he didn't take the bone from here, not from the foot, not from the legs, but he took the rib. Medically speaking,
Yeah.
that's the only bone in our structure, besides the backbone, that's given the privilege to protect all our vitals.
100%.
You don't
And I
wanna
want to
mess
speak
up.
about that theologically.
Yeah.
I want to speak about that theologically.
Please, yeah.
Because you see, the thing I was saying about the head, the reason I struggled with that head thing is because I've explained the setup that we have of a partnership.
Yeah.
Now, when you come back to the original Hebrew of that word head,
Yeah.
the meaning of that word is origin.
All right.
So when you now come, and it's kale, and it's the
Yes.
same word that is then it is the same word that is then used when Paul says, "For the man is the head of the home. The man is the origin.
Yes.
He is the origin of the woman.
woman. Yes.
He is the origin.
Yeah.
Just as God is the origin of the
originator.
church, the originator. So the head, the meaning of the word head, I struggled with it because I was like, yeah, the way we say it and the way we've translated it is to mean he's the boss of, or he's the, but we are equal beings, and even
That's
in this
true.
home, we are partners.
Yes.
What he is the origin. He is definitely
Yes.
the origin.
He founded
of this,
this
home.
thing. It's
he
his baby.
founded this thing. It's his baby.
He came to you when you were having your own life.
Listen.
And say, hey, Ntombi.
Listen, he's the one that carries the seed.
Yes.
That is the seed of the children that I carry and bring
Exactly.
in here. So he is the origin of this
Originator.
thing. He's the originator. He is not the boss of this thing.
that's
He's the
deep.
originator, just as Christ is the originator of the church. And so I was so excited when I learned that, because then I could get my discomfort with this word head. I was like, no, man, this doesn't feel like, because it's not the truth for me. And I believe the way my husband and I live are godly. And the way
Yeah.
we've structured our family is godly. But I can never truthfully say that he's the head. And now I can say it because I can say he's the origin. Of course he's the origin.
Yeah.
He's definitely
Yeah.
the origin. So that is the theological
And in fact, I
part
like
of
that
it.
because even theologically, when he was created, Adam was told, here is your job, here is the garden, here are the animals, tend it, do everything. And God looked at this guy, he was busy working. He said, no, let me actually activate the other one, because he was already there. Special
It was
bone,
activated.
activate it and bring
Yeah.
it to life. And what I like most is that when he was busy naming animals, God caused him to sleep.
Yeah.
When he woke up, he continued with naming things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we tend to want to name and
Want to name and
define. And that's why
define.
even when it comes to a woman, we always, like Adam, say she is going to be called.
Yes.
But again, the fall even complicated matters worse. And therefore, I really would like you to quantify this, because you write a lot about it. I mean, you're a woman, you're writing about religion, you're talking issues about women. Because I want us to set someone free out there who may not have got it. What does it mean to be a woman in the spaces you are? You've talked about your home, but there's business, there's parenting, now there's politics. You're really breaking barriers here.
Yeah.
Talk about what it means, because I know as much as it is a blessing in your life and many others, I talk about this concept I call a B&B.
Yeah.
You know, B&B, bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
But I believe there's a blessing and a burden that comes with
absolutely.
being in Nobuntu.
Oh, absolutely.
So talk to us about those privileges that you see where women can excel
Yeah.
and become the best they can be.
Yeah.
And what is the burden that comes with it?
Yeah. So I firstly want to then finish off the theological thing.
Yes,
because it's
please.
important as a foundation to answering this question.
Okay.
The other thing I mentioned in the book, and I don't go into it in depth because it was one of those things that I got a not yet on.
All right.
But post the book, I've spoken about it often.
All right.
And that is the fact that, and that's the thing that confuses us a lot, especially as Christians. It's the fact that the word Azor, which is helper.
Helper, yeah.
So the woman being the helper, the helpmate, the helper, has been distorted in its meaning.
All right.
In the original Hebrew,
Yeah.
it is Azor or Azur.
Okay.
And that word means rescuer. It is the same word that the Israelites
Lord.
use
Yeah.
when they call to God in scripture and say, come and be our helper, O God. It is the same word 16 times in scripture. It is the same word that is used 3 times in scripture
All right.
to refer to other nations that Israelites calls on to help them in war.
All right.
It means to rescue.
Oh, wow.
And so, as women,
Yeah.
when we have been made as helpers, it is not as assistants, it is as rescuers. We are literally here to rescue the
Life
situation.
service. Life
Service to rescue. And so many women get very frustrated when we have our own conversations and when there's no men. Women will often talk about the frustrations of, but I have to do this and I have to do that. And it feels like men don't think often and they don't see. And this gave me peace in that actually I'm here to rescue.
Now it makes sense why Christ would refer to the church as his wife. And what is the mandate of the church here on earth?
To rescue. To rescue.
To save sinners.
To save sinners.
Who are lost.
We are here as rescuers. We are here to rescue. And I even now to what you're talking about the role now that I have as a woman in these different spaces, the calling is to rescue. And I write this and it frustrates a lot of people, especially men. And I say that everybody has got to be involved and participate in the saving of this country and in the next chapter of this country. But it is women who are going to lead this one.
Okay.
And the reason why it's women who are going to lead it is because women are the ones who rescue. We are currently in a space where we need to be rescued. This country needs to be rescued. And that's by divine making. That is who we are.
It's a woman's job.
We rescue. And so we're there in those spaces. And I want for every woman to understand that the spaces that you are in, you are there and you've been there for many reasons. But in this season and in this moment, you are there because you have to rescue the situation. So in your family, you're there right now to rescue the situation. In your community, you're there right now to rescue the situation. In your business and in the business spaces that you're in, you're there right now to rescue the situation. And I then have to say, in this nation and in the leadership of this nation, we're there to rescue the situation as women. It is a blessing and a burden, yes. So it is a blessing to live in a time where there is the opportunity to come into those spaces. But it doesn't mean that it's easy to even access those spaces. I sit here speaking to you today as the only female deputy leader of a political party in this country.
What has it taken for you to be there?
I really don't know.
The burden of it.
You know, I can say to you that it's taken being consistent and intentional about what I'm called to and being courageous about what I'm called to and being able to, in the moment when it comes, say yes. That's what it's taken. But being the only female deputy leader in this country of a political party is not a thing, at least of the active political parties. It's really not a thing I celebrate. It's a thing I lament.
How so? Why would you lament such a privilege to rescue?
I lament it because I cannot believe that in 2022 that is the case. I lament it because I understand why I'm the only one. The burden that I'm going to talk to now is what makes it difficult for any woman to say yes to that.
Okay.
It's what makes it difficult for any woman to want to be in that space. It is not easy. It is a very, very difficult thing. I am one of only 2 female political leaders in active political parties. So of the top 2, you know, the leader and deputy, there's
They're
Patricia
all males.
DeLille
Yeah.
who's leader of her party, and there's me, who's deputy of Bulban SA, which is our party. That is it. And everybody else is a male. And it is a burden because you walk into spaces where many times you have to, from the minute you walk in, you have to prove yourself. You know, why are you here? That's if people even see you.
Wow.
Generally, you come into spaces and people are dismissive even about your very presence, let alone who you are and what you're here to do. So you always have to prove yourself. We always hear this, but it's true.
Yeah.
Even in other spaces, you know, some spaces of corporate, you have to do more. You have to do more than your male counterparts. You always have to be prepared. You always have to be ready to do more and willing to do more, because you have to prove yourself. You have to prove that you deserve to be here. You have to prove that you are up for the challenge of being here. And it's a burden.
And where I can almost imagine it, why not many women have gone into that space, because they wouldn't take it when actually guns are fired at them and their integrity is questioned and they are expected to do more than perhaps their male counterparts. I remember even when I started this media ministry and I was trying to get more women involved, one of the leaders actually of women told me, we know our places and we don't want to change the status quo. We haven't got time for drama. That's what she said. And I said, what are you talking about? So I want you to talk to me as a man, but also the men who are listening out there. What is it about us that you think we should change? Because I definitely believe there's something in the psyche of men that's broken and cannot just see beyond a woman. Because by creation, the Bible says he created man, male and female. So the only difference between you and me is that you are a man who has a womb. So you get a seed, you produce a human being. You get a building, you create a home. You get a boy, you make him a man. Women have this natural tendency of taking any situation, like you rightfully mentioned. The word that says helper means a rescuer. Adam needed someone to rescue him from dying in his work. So there is something about women that innately God has placed in you to create life and to nurture any situation and produce. You give a woman flour, she'll produce a cake. You give her anything, she will make something which is edible and valuable. And we transfer that same thinking into the spaces you're talking about. Talk to men and tell me, in your experience, what is broken about us and what needs to change? And I know there are many things.
Sure. There is so much that is broken, and I think it starts at the misconception of who or what a woman is.
Okay.
And we need to go back to that. We really need to go to redefining who women are. Men need to redefine who women are. I think that it's very difficult because we have also, you know, in many ways played into the system as women. So because the system has said that I'm only, I then also, you know, have lived up to that, you know, that I'm only this, I'm only that. I had to be very intentional when I got married. You know, I got married young. I was married at the age of 24.
All right.
One of the things that my history teacher said to me, she was one of my favorite teachers when I was in high school, was when you get married, make sure you marry a man who's secure in who they are.
Okay.
Because you're going to need that.
All right.
I was like, okay, I took that advice. And, you know, some years later, when I was getting married, it's one of the things that I remembered and that I was very clear on, that I must have a man who's secure in who they are. So that's the second thing. So one, it's about men redefining who women are. But the other thing is about them being secure in who they are. Because the only way you can give a woman space, the only way you can not be threatened by your wife and her strength, the only way you can support your wife, your sister, your daughter, your mother in the things that they are doing is if you're not scared, they're going to outshine you. And that means the brokenness in men, the fragility in men is around their ego.
Oh, yes.
And, you know, it takes a dismantling of ego to be able to be a man who can really be an ally to women, who can be an enabler for women to be able to rescue in the spaces they need to. I speak often about the dismantling of ego. When you look at what's wrong with the world today, so when you look at what's wrong in politics, in economy, in families, in communities, everything that's wrong, when you really deeply think about it and go to its source, it's ego.
Ego.
So wars have been started because of ego. The corruption that we have is because people are feeding ego. The leadership conflicts that we have are because people are feeding ego. When there's lack of forgiveness in a family, it's because of ego. Everything that's broken is because of ego. And so the real cry to men for me is dismantle the ego.
The ego. I can
Dismantle the ego.
I can hear Adam talking to God. Adam, where are you? I heard your voice. He didn't say we. He said I. She didn't hear.
I.
And I ran and I hid. Why? Who told you that you are naked? And then listen to this one. The woman you gave me. I think that's our problem as men. We always think that our problems are because of women. If it was, I mean, you even hear these cliches. Many graves are marked. If the real cause of death of men was to be said, it will be written women. That kind of talking that says because Adam was not forced to eat that fruit. Eve was deceived, that's what the book says, but when she brought it to Adam, he consciously ate, and then when God asked him, who told you you're naked?
Yeah.
The woman you gave me.
You gave me.
So the very first conversation
of
the first couple we find, men are found blaming God. That's how daring we are.
Blaming God. And I think, you know, that scenario that you speak to speaks of the influence of women. So women are very influential.
Absolutely.
But it then speaks to the need for men to, again, be secure in who they are and have an understanding of who they are, what the mandate is, where they are, so they can stand steadfast in that. You know, and that's important because even when that influence is coming in, it's a negative influence. A man needs to be able to stand in the conviction of what is true and what is right and of who they are. And
so there's a space between the heart. I'm literally saying the heart because it's right there, but I know it's more the emotional space and the mind. God wired us differently, I think. The connections are a bit different. I think for men, they are much more stronger up here than they are here. But women, there are many women who are very compassionate, stronger here. And I guess that's why they are builders and they are restorers of what's broken, because they're able to take in this and work with junk and produce the best. I mean, look at a mother taking a toddler who can't even speak or change their diaper, and that mother will feed that child, teach them how to smile. Very few men can do that because we are never wired to care.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Then when you combine the head and the heart, there are women who are very level up here, who are sharp up here, but who are also caring here. And I guess the challenge for modern women and men alike is to be as human as possible, to be compassionate, but also to be thoughtful. Because sometimes I think men, we don't look ahead in time. Because ego is never about the future. It's about the now. Right here. And
in fact, I was about to say that I love your point about how the world right now needs a more human, it actually needs a more human face, a more human expression of everything. But I also wanted to say, when it comes to the mind, the way our minds are wired differently, which and this is just an observation, it's nothing scientific, is that men tend to be quite factual, right? So
Yes.
they're thinking, their mind is in the now. It's what they see, it's what can be done, and it's what things are and look like now. And there's value to that, and there's a need for that actually. But then women, the way our minds are wired, can see what can be.
Of this.
This. We can see this, but we can see what can be. And often what we need from that, I always see my husband is an engineer by profession, so it's even worse. Our thing is very typically like that.
1 + 1 must just be 2.
Yeah. Very typically
you can't
like
say
that.
It depends.
No. Very typically like that. He is, he's very structured in his thinking, and he sees things as the way they are. I'm like a visionary. So I see things as they can be. I'm quite daring. I'm that kind of person. Yeah. And often I need the factual side of him to rein me back.
Balance you
because
off.
my thing is sometimes goes a little too far. And he needs a bit of my visionary to know what can be so that we move forward and we don't get stuck in what is. I also need the foundation of that factual stuff, even for the future. How should this be structured?
Yeah.
What's going to need to happen for this to even exist in that future?
Yeah.
So that is the balance that I see in my own partnership. And for me, it's always such a picture of how God created the two to work together.
Complementary to one another. In
Very
fact,
much
that's
so.
one of the biggest word, I think, when God created the woman, he didn't replicate the man, but he created a human being who was so perfect by herself. And
Absolutely.
I'm glad Adam was not participating in that process. Otherwise, we'd have told God, give him more muscle there.
What? And then it would have come out the same. It would have been the exact
So
same
he said,
thing.
Adam, go to sleep. I'll make this
I'll
one.
do
So I
this.
believe women are made complete. And they don't need
100%.
men to complete you.
100%.
I think it's the other way around. And God affirmed it by going to take one of the bones that we know medically might be the thinnest, but the toughest. A bone that regenerates itself.
Yeah.
A bone that when it breaks clean. And you don't want to break that bone because many people who die from accidents die from punctured vital signs. And we must know as societies that women are custodians of the most vital life processes. Giving birth to a child, it's like God is making you a deputy God to bring life into this world. Yeah. And you are privileged to be a mother of a family as well. But I want you to talk to South Africa, young girls, women out there, because you are in a position of influence. What is the vision for this country when it comes to women participation at home? Maybe the home you have explained, in business, in the society we live in, and mostly in leadership.
Sure. It is such a big one because, like I said, I do believe for a number of reasons. I believe just that historically, we are where we are at, even in the way businesses operate, even in the way societies are, even in the way nations are. We are in quite a broken place. And I think it is because we have not had the balance of women being able to lead in those spaces as much as we do of men. I spoke about ego being, one of the most destructive things. And I do believe that a lot of the destructiveness and destruction we see is because men often lead on ego. And I want to say that we are now being called into a space to come and take our place in leading. I don't imagine and I don't want a space where women lead alone and where we're only led by women, or where it's only women. That somebody asked me, would you be part of, in an interview, would you be part of a women-only political party? And I would not. I without a shadow of a doubt, can categorically say I would not, because I don't believe in a leadership or in a society that is led by only one group of society. I believe we need men and women. I strongly believe that we're at that place now where we have to take our place, that missing half that has been over this history that I'm speaking about, and take our place. It means that we're going to have to be courageous. It means that we're going to have to make sacrifices. And, when I call on women to get involved in the type of things I'm involved in, one of my businesses is a media business.
Yep.
And we've had productions, on the various channels. In the country, and it is difficult even there being a woman. So I know that in many sectors it's difficult and it takes courage, and we're just going to have to be courageous because the world and where it is right now in its brokenness is not going to be fixed just only by men. It's just not going to happen. Women are going to have to take leadership.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I always say is that we have to lead as who we are. We have to lead in our femininity. The temptation for women is always to come into spaces and then start acting like men. But that's the very thing that has broken society.
Yeah.
We need to come and balance what men have. There's a lot we can learn from men. I mean, I learn from men all the time because I work a lot with them now in the political space, and I'm always like, these ones are bold and courageous. That's the one thing we need to learn from men.
Yeah.
Men are bold and courageous. An unqualified man will come and will take over and will be CEO of that thing and have qualified people reporting to them, and it's not even a thing. They don't even flinch. But that's because they know that this is what they're good at. This is what they have the capacity and the capability to do, and they'll do it. And that's something we need to learn from men and need to do in this moment.
All right.
We have to lead in our femininity, though. We mustn't become men. We mustn't try to be like men because we're what's missing.
Yeah.
One of the biggest and most valuable things you can bring into a space is coming and being as yourself. One of my mentors, my mentor, recently said, someone I respect very much, and she's a global leader and a significant leader in this country. And she said to me that one of the problems with women is that we fight so hard to get to the spaces that when we eventually get to the spaces, we don't lead, we carry on fighting. And that is the one thing that we need to remember, is that when we do that, we're losing the femininity in our leadership. Yes, we have to fight, but don't lose your ability to lead.
Yeah.
When you get there, lead.
Yeah, fantastic. I want us to bring this to a close. I know we could go on the whole day, but I want us to bring this to a close. And I've got some interesting questions I want to ask you. Do I have your permission?
You have my permission. I feel like I've opened up so much. I don't know. There's nothing left to hide.
Oh, yeah, there's so much. There's so much. Now, everyone has a nightmare. What's your nightmare?
Sure.
Either past, present, or future, something you say, I fear this could happen, or this might happen. Or
I fear losing my husband.
Wow.
I am able to be and do all I am, and I would like to hope he's able to do and be all he is because we have each other. And that is something that I pray to God often to say, I pray for long life. I pray that we have each other because I believe that the stuff we call to, we need each other for.
Yeah, that's very deep.
It is.
I think I'm going to have a podcast with you and him at some point.
Oh, we'd love that.
To really talk about, and you're quite right. There's so many people who find themselves without them thinking or planning about it.
Yeah.
They find themselves alone.
Yeah.
And we live in that reality where I don't have control to reverse time to the moment that has just passed. Neither can I fast forward it. I only live for this moment.
Yeah.
And therefore, at any moment, you could find yourself alone. And that's a powerful point. I think we need to talk about that at some point.
I'm glad I gave voice to it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, those nightmares and fears, you keep it. And actually, once it's out, you tend to fear it a little late.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Once it's in the open.
Yes.
Tell me about one thing. I know there are many. Your greatest joy in life.
My children. My children, my sons are definitely my greatest joy in life.
Do you see yourself in them sometimes?
I do. I see different parts of who I am in my children.
And you laugh at yourself. And you're
I
like, oh my Lord.
And I laugh and I'm like, wait, this one, I've been here. I've done this. I know what this is.
Yeah.
But they're such a joy to me. They're my greatest joy. It's such a blessing to be able to be a mother. it's a love I cannot describe. And I always just feel so privileged that I've been able to hold that kind of love and to have capacity for that kind of love.
Yeah. I definitely think that being a parent is something that changes you forever. Forever.
Definitely.
And it's a privilege that you are a parent and a mother to those boys. So, boys, you know mom loves you, right?
Yeah.
So make her happy all the time. Great stuff. Now, let's talk about Nobuntu when she comes from her stressful meetings. You have had a stressful day. When you sit down to eat, what is the meal you want to see in front of you? The
Lasagna, without a shadow of a doubt.
Lasagna?
Lasagna. That is my comfort food.
All right.
Yes, that is my comfort food, and definitely.
I think I'm going to invite you for lunch because my wife cooks some of the best lasagnas
And
I've
you know,
ever tasted.
The best lasagna is homemade.
Yes, she does
So
it homemade.
I'm waiting for this invitation. I want this invitation.
No, I'm sure V
Favorites.
is watching this. I'm going to tell her to cook one for you.
Yes, please.
You'll come for it.
Yes, please. I'll definitely come.
Fantastic. Now, the last one I have is, I know you've published 2 books now, right? We've got this one, The Fire in My Bones. And I think you've published another one where you say perfect mess and perfect grace. If you were to write another topic or title of a book, what will it be about?
It would be called Led.
Led.
Led, L-E-D, Led. And it would be about leading.
Okay.
So leading as a woman, leading as a black person, leading in different spaces. But it would also be about being led.
Leadership, as they call it.
Leadership, as they call it. But it would really come from the place of I'm led by God. I shared this right in the beginning. I'm fully led by God. So it would be about the life of a leader, living led.
Wow.
Yeah.
I look forward to read that. I'm sure it must be in the press anytime soon.
Can't we make it just a podcast? And
Yes, we can.
Because writing right now. if you can take up the challenge of us doing a podcast like that, I'd love it.
It's taken. Consider it taken. It will be an honor for me to do it. You know how much I've always desired to have you on this set. So I'm actually wondering right now, when am I going to have it back?
What are we going to do?
It will be a privilege for me to do that. So maybe look straight into the camera and talk to a young girl, perhaps in Limpopo, perhaps Cape Town, about what's possible today for them where they are.
You know, one of my greatest privileges is going into communities and seeing the look in the faces of young girls, of young women when they see me. They usually see me with a group of many leaders, and I'm the only woman. And they look, and there's just this look in their eyes. I can never explain it, but it's hope, it's admiration, it's awe. And I want to say that when you see me, as you see me now, I'm yourself. I'm you. There's so much that's possible, but the 2 things that are important in making those things possible, one is God. I can never claim and I can never speak about what I do and where I've come and the things I'm still to do and the spaces I'm in without acknowledging God, because it's only through God and it's only because of God and it's only because I'm sent by God. That's the first thing. The second is to say, be led by who God has made you to be and what your purpose is. Don't try to imitate other people. Don't try to become something that you're not. No matter what your background or your circumstances, this thing that's in you, it's big, and it's big enough to get you to places. It can drive you to places you've never imagined in your life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you've heard it. This is it. This has been Nobuntu. What a blessing.
Thank you so much for having me.
I wish you the best in your career.
Thank you.
And this new big task you've taken on board. Regards to your team and your supporters, and all the best friends. This has been the podcast on the go with MelVee, your host, and it's been a privilege to have Nobuntu with us today. God bless you. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so so that you don't miss out on the future episodes. But if you have a question, you have a comment, if something you want to share with us, just drop it in the comments below. We'll be very happy to hear from you and to interact with you. Blessings upon you and all the best. See you in the next one.